Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Helen Tuddenham is an executive coach based in Sussex. She says that when she used to network for her employer, she probably didn't take it seriously enough. But now she does it for herself, she's much more strategic. Thanks for being my guest on the podcast today, Helen.
Nice to be here, Liz. Great to meet you.
Now, you describe yourself as an executive coach these days, but tell me about your background. What's your career path been? Because I know this isn't something that you've always done, is it?
No, I'm actually an accountant by background. So I joined one of the big four accounting and consulting firms straight from university. And I was there nearly 25 years before I left. So doing a variety of different roles. But when I left, I was the director of the people risk team. So that involved working with clients, helping them to improve the capability and culture of their teams.
So you must have enjoyed working there if you stayed as long as that.
Well, I did, and they're actually still a client of mine. So I did work there. And I think when I look back, every 5 years or so, I slightly changed my career or morphed it a little bit or got a new role. And I think I left because I just couldn't see where the next role was coming from, really. But a great organisation to work for. And as I say, I still work with them now.
Yeah. Was it difficult to leave after such a long career there?
Yes. So I'd started thinking about it probably 2 years before I left, and then spent a year seriously thinking about it and not quite sort of taking the leap. I'm quite a conscientious person, and I was trying to lead the team in a good place when I left. So we recruited my successor. And various other things. And then by the time I did leave, it was very early February 2020 when I thought COVID was going to stay in China.
Yes, and as we all know, that's not what happened. So what happened to you then? You just left your career and suddenly the world went into meltdown. What did you do?
Yeah, so I'd gone down to 4 days a week a few months before. So I had started doing some work on the side with some coaching clients, and I basically spent the time getting to know what to do as an individual entrepreneur running my own business. I had 2 children at home, homeschooling. Luckily, they were old enough that they didn't need a huge amount of help from me. And I basically started networking, really. So with people that I'd used to work with at my previous company, but also people I knew I'd worked with maybe 10, 15 years ago who'd left to set up themselves as well. So I basically just started reaching out to my network and chatting with people on Zoom.
And what was it that brought you to coaching? Why did you decide that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so quite a bit of my career at PwC had been doing training, so either internally or with clients in the sort of the last 10 years or so. And one of the other roles I had was as what they called a career coach. So I would have 4 or 5 managers, senior managers, who I would help them develop their careers with the firm. And that led me to do some additional work in terms of helping people get through promotion processes, and thinking about longer term career development. So I very much was an informal career coach, and I really enjoyed that kind of thing. So the year before I left in 2019, I had a sort of a mini career break and did a formal coaching qualification, and really enjoyed it. And I started doing a little bit of internal coaching at PwC, but just the way it was all set up didn't really lend it myself to it for me to do that full time. So yes, that's how I got into it and how I decided this is what I want to do full time or nearly full time. And I couldn't do that where I was at PwC.
Yeah. So since that initial training that you did, have you done more training on top of that?
Yeah, so I did that training 2019. Then I became ACC, so accredited coach with the International Coach Federation. So that involves some one-to-one mentor coaching. I'm actually having to, because that's now 3 years old, I'm having to redo that this autumn. So I'm currently doing more mentor coaching, and that also involves listening to recordings of myself. I've done some training on different techniques as well. So some on transactional analysis. And then last autumn, I did a course on neurolinguistic programming as well.
Oh, excellent. So tell me about what your business looks like now. Who are your clients? Who do you help?
Yeah, so I work mainly with experienced professionals. So they tend to be accountants, lawyers, consultants. And I work with people just to help them untangle the complexities of leadership. So a lot of that is working out what are the obstacles that are in their way, helping them to overcome those. And when they've got that, they have a sense of a better sense of who they are as a leader, so how they lead, how they operate at work, and that gives them the confidence as well, just to thrive in their career, make those decisions, take that step forward.
And how do your clients come to you? How do they find out about you, and what sort of issues do they come to you with?
Yeah, so most of my work comes from referrals, so from my network. Probably about, when I last looked, probably about 70%.
Mm,
Some through LinkedIn, a few through website, and they're coming to me for different reasons. Actually, I'd probably split them into three groups. So there's a group who are looking to get promoted, and they're nearly there, but not quite. And the word confidence comes up quite a
mm,
lot. Confidence means different things to different people. So we spend a bit of time unpicking what that actually is. The second group have just got promoted. So typically the type of people I work, they've just got partner in an organization. And then they realize that actually they think they've made it, but actually you're almost starting again. So you're
mm,
the new boy or new girl. And there's a lot around politics, particularly in some of the smaller organizations, trying to work out who you are as a partner and how your relationships with the other partners might change, an expectation on you winning more work as well, and what that means. And then the third group are people who probably similar to what I was actually about 5 years ago. So people who don't hate their job, quite like it, but think there might be something better out there for them, but they're not quite sure what that is, or they might know, but they're really struggling with that decision as to whether I stay or whether I go.
mm. And how do you work with them? Is it face-to-face meetings? Do you do it online, or a bit of both?
A bit of both. Because I started my business, so I had my first couple of clients before lockdown were face to face. Then obviously in
Yeah.
COVID everything went online, and then actually what I found is that the vast majority of clients are still happy to meet online. So if they're near me geographically, I will tend to meet them in person for the first session, just to help them think about what their objectives are for the coaching, get to meet them face to face. But the vast majority of it is online. I also do some leadership development as well, and that's pretty much all back face to face now.
Mm, mm. And whereabouts are your clients? And where are you in the country? And do you tend to work with people that are local to you, or do you work with people all over the place?
Yeah, so I'm in Sussex, so north of Brighton, and my clients are from all over the place actually. So quite a lot in the London, Brighton, and sort of the corridor in between. But also I've had clients in Yorkshire, in Bristol. I've had some clients in the US, in Germany as well. So Belfast, a
Mm.
recent one. So again, the beauty of being online is that you can coach people anywhere.
Yes, yeah. So what difference does your work make to people? What kind of impact would you say that you're having?
Yeah, I think there's a lot about self-awareness. So I think most coaching comes from a place of helping people to be more self-aware. And that's both thinking about their strengths and what it is that makes them really good at what they do, and being able to use those internal resources to get even better and go even further. And but also an awareness of what it is that might be holding them back. So a lot of people will talk about, I sometimes get in my own way, or I lack confidence. But as I said earlier, that we sort of dig into that a little bit. So what is it that's actually going on? What is that voice in your head actually saying to you? and helping them to overcome that. So, when people have had coaching, a lot of people say they feel a bit lighter. They feel more able to tackle some of those difficult issues they face in their leadership. So that might be around difficult people issues in their team, working out tricky relationships, having the confidence to be more visible as well, I think, which I think is important in larger companies.
Yeah. Now, as well as running your own business, I know you're involved in a couple of other things, Tide Risers and the Grow Group. So tell me something about those those things.
Yeah, so Tide Risers is an organisation that I started working with before I left my job. So they are a women's leadership organisation. So that is pretty much all virtual. Occasionally there are get-togethers. There's about 300 women across the globe. Majority of them are in the US because that's where it was founded, but quite a few in the UK and Europe now as well. And we do different things. So there's always a monthly catch-up. There's a virtual network, so we use Slack. And people are often just helping out, asking for a sounding board, asking people for advice. Sometimes it's the really practical things like, who do you get your insurance from? Sometimes it's much more wider things as well about people who might be struggling in their business at the moment. And then there are 3 regular programs that occur as well, at people trying to find different levels of leadership. And we have an annual summit. And the Grow Group is very different. So that's a training organisation who work with medium-sized accountancy and law firms. So they do leadership development training, management training. They do work helping organisations thinking about their strategy, particularly when it comes to sales. And they do coaching as well. So I work with them as an associate. In fact, I work with both companies really as an associate, but I'm also in the Tide Risers network and get a lot of benefit from it myself.
Yeah. So let's talk about networking now. Was networking something that you did in your old corporate job?
I did. I was going to say, I'm not sure if I took it seriously. I think that's probably the wrong expression. I went because I enjoyed it. So I like meeting new people. I like talking about things. And I think some of my earliest experiences were in the firm's women's network, which would be quite often internal. So I would meet other women from across the organisation. But also going to some external networks that were particularly around industries and topics and that kind of thing. And I went and I'd have some nice nibbles and some nice food and a chat and a drink, but didn't really leverage it, I think. And that was probably because I'd never been taught about what networking was and how it can help you in your business. And I often think now, actually, if I knew now what I know now about networking then, I probably would have been, more successful in my previous job as well.
So how do you approach it now that you're doing it for yourself?
I would say I'm a little bit more strategic and a bit more intentional. So I try to get to 3 or 4 events a month. So some of those are online and some of those are in person. I think there's something about knowing what networks work for you and your business. And I've had to stop some networks that I really enjoyed personally, but were perhaps not right for my business. And we've all got limited time, so you do have to make some difficult decisions. I tend to go with an intention of making 1 or 2 really good connections. So I think it's easier probably to speak to maybe 3 or 4 people and have some good quality conversations than to sort of just say hello and swap business cards or whatever with a wider range of people. And so if I get a list in advance, I'd look at the people and see people who perhaps I know a little bit because we've got friends in common, but I don't really know them, or people who work in the same industry as me, and maybe choose 3 and think if I can have a good conversation with one of these, then that would be a successful event for me. I have seen people wandering around networking events almost ticking people off, which is a little bit off-putting, but it's going with a bit of intention. And then I think always following up afterwards. And that might
Yeah.
just be, it was, it's great to have a chat. We should meet again at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. So you sort of kind of mentioned this at the start, but how useful was your old network of connections from your previous life in working for PwC when you started your own business?
Yeah, really important actually, in a couple of ways. So one, because a lot of people had trod my path before, and were quite well established, it was just really good learning from them. So how do you start a coaching business? Where do you get your clients from? That kind of thing. But also they've been a really good source of referrals and work for me as well. So I have had referrals from my new network, but I've probably had more from my old network, and they've not necessarily been referrals from people that I was really close to.
Mm.
Or worked a lot with. They're people that we might have worked on one project together, or we were in the same office together. So there's something that I think about, well, it's probably two things really. One is we quite often focus about adding new people to our network, but there's something about how do you keep in touch with the people who've been in your network for a lot longer, so that established network. But there's also something about not discounting people that I think it's Adam Grant, but somebody calls them weak ties. So they might be friends of friends or people very much on the periphery of your network. But because they're on the periphery, they're probably quite different to you, and therefore their wider network is probably very different to your network, and you can get access to that through them.
Yeah. So how far afield would you go if you're networking, if you're going to an in-person event?
Well, tonight I'm going to London, and interestingly, that is a network drinks that I've been invited to through somebody who I met at a networking event. So through meeting her, I now have access to some of her network as well. So I don't know, door to door, that would be an hour and a half, something like that. Probably wouldn't go much further than that for a face-to-face event, because they typically are only, a couple of hours. It's lunchtime, it's an evening. So for me, it's London, Brighton, and then some networks that are much more local to me as well.
Yeah. So what next for your business and your networking? What plans do you have, Helen?
So I'm going to have a little bit of time off over the summer. So still be working, but very much on a part-time basis. I've had a very busy June, and I know I've got a very busy October and November with some of my leadership development work. What I'm looking to do is think about why smaller organizations in particular, and for me that's smaller accounting and law firms, tend not to do much coaching with their staff. So is it because they think it's going to be really expensive, or because they don't know the value of it? And so at the moment, I'm in the early planning stages of doing a bit of a research project that will happen over the autumn, and the result of which will be some kind of white paper or document to share. And then my plan then is probably February, March next year to run a couple of roundtables. So for people who work in talent in those organizations, just partly to bring them together so they can learn each other and do some of their own networking. But also to have that discussion about, well, how do you deal with some of the issues that you're facing in your business at the moment? So succession planning, perhaps younger people who actually don't want to be partners, people who want a bit more freedom and are looking to be associate lawyers and accountants rather than be employed. So interestingly, I'm probably going from attending networks to being a convener people as well, taking the next step.
Yeah, brilliant. So one final question then, Helen. If people want to know more about you and your business, what is the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, so probably my website, which is helentuddenhamconsulting.com. And also I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram, but probably more on LinkedIn. And so you can find me just under Helen Tuddenham, and that's an easy place to find me there and just connect. And it'd be great to have a chat with you about networking.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for being my guest today.
Great. Thanks, Liz. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.